Jai Shriman Narayan. Jai Shriman Narayan. Jai Shriman Narayan. I pay my obeisances to my spiritual master, Srimad Jagat Guru Sudarshan Acharyaji Maharaj. I pay my obeisances to Lakshmi Ramanuj. I pay my obeisances to the Purva Acharyas. I pay my obeisances to the 12 Alvars. I pay my obeisances to Mother Lakshmi, and I pay my obeisances to Lord Sriman Narayan. I welcome all of you physically here at the Sri Narayan Dham in Durban, South Africa. I welcome those that's watching this discourse locally, nationally, and internationally. And I welcome in advance those that's going to be watching this discourse on YouTube and the various groups from around the world subsequently. We continue in our topic of creation, and we are going to discuss consciousness. Consciousness is a symptom of the soul. In the previous discourse, I described, as per the Vedas, the size of the soul. And the Vedas state that the soul is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of your hair, which means if you take the tip of your hair and divide it by 10,000, then you take one part and divide that one part by 10,000, then you take one part of that second division, that is the size of the soul, that is seated in the heart of the human body. The symptom of the soul is consciousness. And the best analogy would be the sun and the sun's rays. So if the sun is described as the soul, then the rays will be the consciousness. Or if you look at your light bulb here, the light bulb is the soul, and the light and the diffusion of the light from the light bulb is consciousness. So we also discussed previously, in the previous 2 or 3 discourses, the I factor. Somehow there is an I, and somehow you identify with this I. Now the consciousness has 2 aspects. The substantive aspect and the attributive aspect. The substantive aspect of the consciousness makes you self-aware, and this I-ness, that you know there is an I which you identify as yourself, is through the substantive consciousness. Since time immemorial, there is an aspect, and I've discussed this previously, called karma. And it is beginningless, however it can end. Individually, karma can end. Each person's karma can end. not stuck in the ebb and flow of karma perpetually. You have the opportunity to end your accumulated karma in every lifetime as a human being. And this is very simple. If you buy a microwave, then you're going to get a handbook with the microwave. And recently, this new microwave also give you recipes on how to create various types of food and how the microwave can be used with liquids, solids, and other factors. So if you follow the instructions from the booklet of the microwave to perfection, then all your undertaking with the microwave will be absolutely. If you follow the instructions perfectly, then all your undertakings, all your transactions with the microwave will be absolute. But if you chop and change, you know you cannot put any gold foiled or gold foiled cutlery or china into the microwave. You know that or not? All of you know that? And if you do, what will happen? The microwave would not perform to its optimum. It will also get defective, and the vessel that was put into it will also get defective. Is it not? So, for every creation, there's an absolute manual, and similarly, for this universe, there's also an absolute manual. So, this manual, that is why I cannot see the needles. So he bought me a gold clock to make sure I stop on time, but unfortunately from where I'm seated, I can only see 12 numbers. Okay. Then, it's fine, sure. If we use the user's manual on how a human being should subsist in the bigger microwave, called the universe, then like the smaller microwave, all your transactions will be successful and absolute. It's very simple. It is very simple. And if you don't, then that recipe will get Jayashree and Jessica together. Now they formed a cabal. Jayashree and Jessica have formed a cabal. Now they're seated next to me. Right, Jayashree? So if you do not follow the instructions of the microwave when you bake in something, and if it does not come out right, what would you do? Jessica, take the microwave and bang it on the floor. Ask that is by to get another one. Satyabha, how many microwaves you have bought in your life? or you think you need to follow the recipe more accurately. So every time you flop up, then you go back to the recipe and try and use it as meticulously as possible. It's called evolution. So you evolve in using your recipe. Right? Now this, if we segment it, and if I'm using the microwave as an analogy, then in one lifetime you can become perfect. But in this big microwave called the universe, the recipe of your life is messed up. Your entire life is messed up, and when you want to create, or when you want to live within the parameters of the right recipe, then you get another life to rectify it. But that other life will be in human form. That other life will be in human form, and if you do not rectify it, then you'll continue evolving until it is perfected. So this is where your attributive consciousness comes in. The substantive consciousness will make you self-aware, and your attributive consciousness is initially or constitutionally all-knowing. When I say all-knowing, knowing what? Vasudeva?
Who the Supreme Personality of God is.
All knowledge. All-knowing, all knowledge that is contained within the Vedas and that which is not contained within the Vedas, but Vedic knowledge. Knowledge, spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge. So that is the constitutional position of the soul. It has consciousness in two aspects. One aspect of its consciousness is substantive, that makes you aware of I. The I-ness, self-aware. Then the attributive consciousness, which constitutionally is all-knowing, but when conjoined with material nature, specifically a material body in proportion to beginningless karma, that knowledge becomes contracted. That all-knowingness becomes contracted. And basically, remember, consciousness, the soul is an energy that was never created and can never be destroyed. And the symptom of the soul is consciousness, which also will be energy that cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be converted. It can be modified. So the attributive consciousness, which is all-knowing, when it comes into contact with material nature, your material body, together with your stock of karma for that body, then that knowledge becomes proportionally constricted. Your attributive consciousness. Then this body experiences through modification of the attributive consciousness, the soul experiences through the instrument of the body desire and hatred. Desire and hatred. And this desire and hatred continues to give you body upon body upon body upon body. And this is a perpetual cycle. Then, Satisfied? What's the time? What's the time? 7:30. This attributive consciousness is actually knowledge constricted and modified into desire and hatred, which gives birth to other modifications, such as anger, pride, lust, greed. All these modified energies is in reality your attributive consciousness, which initially or constitutionally supposed to be knowledge. All of you understand? So knowledge is also energy, and this energy is converted from knowledge to opposite of knowledge, ignorance. Opposite of knowledge, ignorance. And your karmas are so designed as to have a specific proportion of knowledge together with a specific proportion of knowledge. Are you understanding? So, God has created this universe with a manual and a pocketbook manual, and a pocketbook manual called the Bhagavad Gita. This Bhagavad Gita explains how to live in this material universe as a perfected human being, and it also shows all the imperfections. It shows all the evils, and it shows all the divinities. Evils and divinities. It teaches how to detach and this is a very, very difficult concept to understand, because it's not just for understanding. Only when you practice detachment, then will detachment be experienced and revealed. So I will give you a small example, as I normally do. If you state, Vasudeva, I had a very good meal. I ate a very good meal. Vasudeva, I think Guru has a right only with satsang to name you in this example. Devashni is in a total agreement. Vasudeva, are you a specialist in this field? Okay. So Vasudeva proudly states, I ate a delicious meal in abundance. Okay? And if you follow our 2017 2 weeks of crisscross in India with Vasudeva, and if you go into those memories I keep sharing, where there's 30 or 40 photographs, you'll see the size of the meals that Vasudeva was eating. And when we met our counterpart in India, and he saw Vasudeva, he was really shocked that a man of this stature was eating so much. He thought Vasudeva would be 3 times his size. You remember Vasudeva? Yes. And this declaration was made where, Vasudeva? In a restaurant itself. In a restaurant itself. So Vasudeva is not only locally known, professionally he is, like his guru, international. Alright? So whether Vasudeva states whether he had a very good meal, the digestion of the meal goes on. That is why I want you to understand this concept. Whether Vasudeva states, I had a very great meal with pride or not, the process of digestion will take place. So similarly, we state, do not attach yourself to the fruit of your action. The fruit of his action was eating, and the result of that eating is digestion. Is it not? The result will take place, whether you acknowledge it or not. And the reason we say do not acknowledge the fruit of your action, so that you do not get bound by karma, and that your attributive consciousness do not get more blocked than it already is. So as soon as your attributive consciousness through service, coming to satsang, doing seva, donating either to your ashram or to humanity, upliftment of humanity, it brings down your storehouse or your huge warehouse of karma, and in the same proportion your attributive consciousness gets cleared. And as it gets cleared, it gets closer to the attributive consciousness of the Supreme Lord. And continuity in satsang will ensure, that when your attributive consciousness merges with the Lord's attributive consciousness, you will be totally spiritual. The individual soul never merges with the Lord. But the consciousness, the attributive consciousness, merges with the consciousness or the attributive consciousness of the Supreme Lord. Are there any questions? Vasudeva? Any questions? So, in conclusion, of you saw a posting yesterday, or 2 or 3 days ago, of my very first satsang in a classroom. You also? Okay. That was on the 10th of October 2013. From that time, I think in 7 years, 200 satsang for 4 years, I've done over 1,000 satsang. I've done over 1,000 satsangs only in 7 years. Only in 7 years, over 1,000 satsangs and discourses. We started in the school across the road here. It was a filthy hall which we put decor and lights, and we made it a road there, 7-star for Guruji, and we have not stopped since, and that was 7 years ago. And we are here today at the Sri Narayan Dham in a mere 7 years. Nobody who started with us in that 7 years is here. Besides Shyam. We have gratitude that he lent us his car. At that point in time, we were very poor. Okay, Guruji made us absolutely poverty-stricken in order for us to start satsang. So we didn't even have our own car, and we used Shravan's car. But the reason we are seated here today is that we've been principled and consistent. Myself and Mataji has been principled and consistent. Everyone is new here. All of you are new. And this has happened many times. We had many loyalties, Vasan. Many people pledged their allegiance to this institution. Many people said, Acharyaji, I'll never leave you. I don't see them. Thousands. Alright? Thousands. But we were not attached to them. Because we were not attached to them, we could continue with our mission. No matter how much they tried to bring us down, due to non-attachment, today we are sitting in a mere 7 years in this satsang. And I was telling Mataji just now in our kutir that when our local audience and our social media audience, when they view this ashram, then they would think that we have a huge committee, we have great funding, with a very big and professional organization. I have one department for media, I have one department for welfare, because that is the image that is out there in the world. But we don't have anybody. People might also say, Acharyaji sits in his kutir whole day learning what to discuss. Every year I go to work. Every year I go to work. Don't I? Yeah, every year. Whenever the opportunity arises, I go to work. And every year I catch it. Every year I catch it from the superiors. Alright? But nevertheless, we are principled. We are principles we are not attached, we want to continue promoting Sanatana Dharma as it really is. And similarly, if you lose your attachment, losing your attachment means your emotional involvement. That's all it means, emotionally attached. Emotionally attached. Imagine if I had to sit and cry over the 1,000 people, Vasudeva, times 1,000 hours each that I spent on each of these people. You think I'll have time to do one satsang? But because we are detached emotionally, then as they come in, as they go out, it does not matter, because I'm only attached to my Guru. I'm only attached to my Guru, and by being attached to my Guru, I'm detached from everything else in the world. I am detached from everything else in the world. Everything happens here in this ashram. Vasudeva, do I have to go in? Why, Jessica? Because I'm attached to my Guru. It's his duty to provide, whilst I am here. So this is a lesson. This is a living example and a living lesson. Be principled, be loyal. And if you take an iron and place it next to a magnet, and if that iron is in close proximity of the magnet all the time, one day that iron becomes a magnet. Similarly, if you continue attending a bona fide satsang by a bona fide guru, then one day you will become a bona fide disciple. All of you understand? And when you become a bona fide disciple, you glow like a particle of the Supreme Lord, because you are his part and parcel. Jai Shriman